Ladies and gentlemen, the MOUTHCAST.
On this edition, one of the most remarkable voices you're likely to hear. His 1994 solo debut was followed a year later by a collaboration which endures to this day. Perhaps the best post-breakup song of the last 20 years, certainly one of the most joyous soul singles ever put to tape. The song, Yes.
So you wanna know me now, how I feel. You can't help someone recover after what you did.
He's collaborated with composers Craig Armstrong and Michael Nyman, and with David Arnold recorded a sparkling version of Bond theme, Diamonds Are Forever. He's now half of duo Fingersnap, whose exquisite Blackbirds has had critics and audience flocking over the last couple of weeks. My guest, David McALMONT.
Just as my summer's thick air with fears and the dew are gone, my happiness is your return, and my December's dawn, my nightingale lieutenant, my skilless salon. And I would the wings of blackbirds would sing me to my dreams, and I would that wings of blackbirds sing me.
Welcome to the Mouthcast, David McALMONT.
Hello.
How are you, sir?
Yeah, I'm fine. How are you?
I'm very well. The Fingersnap song Blackbirds has been receiving some much warranted attention lately, and in a way it feels like that song is the announcement of a new era for you.
That's really well observed. I would say that there was some residue from the way that we used to do things, because Guy and I first met in the 90s when there was a particular way of going about making and releasing a record. And it wasn't independent. It was very much about securing funding from corporate labels and getting yourself plugged onto playlists. But then we realized that what was really special about what we did was the live thing, and that it was very much about voice and piano. Lots of people who like what I do really like hearing my voice with a minimum of accompaniment, except for the McALMONT and Butler fans, of course. They really like the combination of the voice with noise, but then something really special happens when it's just Guy and I on stage. And so we decided that we wanted to bring that essence to record, and Blackbirds is the first thing that we've written and released that has done as well as this. So yeah, it did feel like a new moment in what we were doing.
I get the feeling from one or two comments that you've made on social media that the way Blackbirds has taken off in the last couple of weeks, the way people are taking it to their hearts, rather, means a great deal to you.
Yeah, because it's really reassuring. The thing with me is that I got quite traumatized by corporate industry. And what I mean by that is there was so much pressure on me from publishers and record labels to create hooks. You know, it was an era where songwriting was very much about coming up with that killer key change, that killer lyric and all of that. And then it got to a point where I was so conditioned by it that I'd sit down to write something and I couldn't write a note or a word without thinking, is this it? Is this it? Is this the hook? And so I got a bit traumatized by it. I think that's the best way to describe it. And when we wrote Blackbirds, I wrote a poem, a romantic poem about a blackbird in the tree out there. Actually, this week it's been quite funny because there are lots of blackbirds dancing about under the tree. And I just thought, oh, fuck it, I'm going to write a poem about blackbirds and the way that it's changed, because blackbirds used to greet my hangover first thing in the morning after I'd been up all night and be a very disturbing song to me. Then I stopped drinking and I decided that I wanted to sleep, and the blackbirds annoyed me and kept me awake. And then I realized I couldn't do anything about the blackbirds, so I just had to get into it. I started meditating to Blackbird's song, and then I fell in love with them. But I had to ask what that bloody bird was first. What is that bird that makes that noise? Yeah, so Guy got very down. Guy wrote a piece of music when he was emerging from a really difficult time, and he'd studied Baroque harmony for 2 years. And that was really behind the sort of music that he made. So when we wrote it, it was pure, and it was just about creating a song. And it was very much about the way that the audience responded to it when we did it live. That made me think there was something quite special about it. So the response to it has just been a vindication of that.
It's interesting that that song kind of stands alone in the stuff that you've done so far. In terms of feel, it's quieter, much more intimate than the sort of British soul sound of the Smokehouse EP.
The British soul sound of the Smokehouse EP. I like that. Yes, it's quite unique. There was a bid to create great pop when we were doing the Smokehouse EP, and I think that we succeeded in songwriting terms. Technically, we were able to bring some songwriting and a degree of freedom. But what we weren't doing, and what I sensed, and what I was pushing Guy towards, and what I was probably aiming for myself, was that sense of freedom that wasn't beholden to these narrow targets that corporate industry directs you to. And conversely, Blackbirds is the song that's done best. It is its own sound rather than a particular sound with a particular aim. That's what's making us so happy about it, is that it was given to us and it doesn't really feel like it belongs to us.
As a listener, it sounds like one of those songs that has appeared from nowhere for the writer. It just feels like it must have arrived fully formed. Was it actually like that?
Well, Guy gave me the music and I just grabbed a few lines from my poem, and that's how it came about. So, yeah, it does feel as though I didn't write it. I wrote a poem and borrowed some lines from it. It wasn't one of those situations where I was sitting down thinking, is this a hook? Is this a hook? Is that a hook? Yeah. You know, will the radio like this? It wasn't like that, which was a real kind of breakthrough, a real kind of exorcism of certain songwriting concerns that I had. And the writing has been a lot freer since then.
Well, there's an air of loss, maybe even loneliness, and a feeling of the inevitable passing of time in not just the lyrics, but the whole song, the feel of the song, that many people...
And Lewis, in his animation, really captures that as well, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. Many people will be able to relate to that. But as a songwriter, when that kind of thing happens, that the song takes on a life of its own, perhaps beyond what you were actually writing about, how does that feel?
It feels as if though you're the channel rather than the spin doctor. Do you know what I mean?
I think so.
I think that you think about a certain school of songwriting, the Brill Building, or Saw, as in Stock Aitken and Waterman, or Motown, and you think about these labs where people are getting together to write hits. And I think that's really great. Lots of my favorite songs come from all three of those, But there's also this thing of just being a bit clear and just allowing information and inspiration that's out there to come through you and become something. And it feels as if we had a direct line. And Guy was writing from a place of loneliness and isolation, and I was just writing about something quite natural and a human response to birdsong. When we wrote that, I thought that it would just be a song that would be received as a nice slow ballad, and that we were yet to come up with that definitive moment for Fingersnap. Like I say, when we did it live, we thought, oh, there's something up here. The most telling one was when we did a workshop at a performance art college in Stratford. Guy wanted to do Blackbirds in front of this audience of 20-somethings, and I was like, oh, I don't know. They're young. Shouldn't we do the more up-tempo, the more British soul-y ones? But when we did Blackbirds, you could have heard a pin drop. They were just completely astonished by it. And that's the sort of thing that I certainly can't do by design. If we sat down now to make a song do what Blackbirds does, You wouldn't be able to do it, you know. Until that point, the song in the set that had that effect was Grapefruit Moon. We do a version of Grapefruit Moon by Tom Waits.
Mm-hmm.
Before Blackbird, at the end of the set, the response usually was, what was that song about the moon that you did? And now it's, what was that? Wait, that song about the bird.
And I would the wings of blackbirds would sing me to my dreams, and I would that wings of blackbirds would sing me. Oh, would you sing me to my dreams? I would the wings of blackbirds would sing me.
Well, you met Guy when he came in to play keyboards on A Little Communication, which was the solo album you worked on after McALMONT and Butler. Was it an immediate thing between you, an immediate musical chemistry?
Well, it's funny, Guy has changed so much. He's still a very confident, capable, talented chap. But when I first met him, he was crazy. He was doing very well at the time. It was the mid to late 90s. So he was a wicked Hammond player. And you remember Baggy, right? Madchester.
Yes.
Everybody was going for that Hammond sound. And Guy was very much one of the go-to session guys for that, fantastic Hammond sound. And it was quite a crazy time for me, lots of success, lots of parties, lots of mischief to be gotten up to. So Guy and I gelled quite well. But every time that he said that he wanted to get into the studio with me, just the two of us, I was like, yeah, I'm not going into the studio with a nutter like you. And then we went on tour with Lisa Stansfield. And at the end of the Lisa Stansfield tour, he said, I know exactly what needs to happen with A Little Communication, because before A Little Communication became what it is now, it was very much a band-formed sound. And I said, yeah, Guy, whatever. And behind my back, he had a chat with my producer, Tommy D. And then I got into the studio. There was Guy like, hi, David. And he had the right vibe for A Little Communication. And that was the moment at which the relationship became quite solid. And lots of different things happened over the years. But every time that I've had a space, I've always, wondered what Guy was doing and sort of coaxed him back to a collaboration with me. And so in the last 5 years or so, we decided that we should really formalize it and make it something ongoing, because we couldn't really leave each other alone musically.
How does it work between you? Do you sit down for writing sessions, or is it much less structured than that?
Well, before the Smokehouse EP, we went to Ireland quite a bit. Stayed at a cottage in a place called Clunacool, which is in County Sligo. My friend Patrick from the Kitchens of Distinction, I don't know if you remember them.
Yeah, they just put an album out again.
Folly.
Yeah.
One of the photographs on the Japan to Jupiter video is of me. You should have a look at that and see if you can find me in it. I don't look anything like how I look now. But he let us use his cottage, and we went out there and we spent a lot of time doing that sort of lab thing. Guy was in the modern cottage, I was in the rustic cottage. We'd meet every morning for breakfast. Guy was fashioning chords, and I was just writing lyrics. And it came together that way. And that's the relationship, really. I completely bow to Guy's better judgment on the music front. And he writes for my voice. And I'm quite free in lyric terms.
You're no stranger to the idea of collaboration, and you've worked with some really interesting people over the years, really impressive talents. Bernard, of course, David Arnold, Craig Armstrong. The one that sticks out for me is Michael Nyman.
Yeah.
Draftsman's Contract, Z and Two Noughts, The Cook, the Thief, His Wife and Her Lover. The music for those Peter Greenaway films is really distinctive and quite unusual. You worked together on an album in 2009, The Glare.
Wow, was it 2009? Where does the time go?
Something happened when they let me down. I couldn't look your way, although I heard you when you said my name.
How did that collaboration actually come about?
I said a prayer. I prayed, I kind of got to a point. I fell out with my manager. I sacked him, and I was just got a bit maudlin about the situation and went into, oh God, not this again. Every time things just look as if they're about to go somewhere, I have a moment of falling out with somebody that scuppers things. And so I just said, God, what do I do now? And the answer came back very quickly, like that: sign up to Facebook. And so I opened a Facebook account. And I promise you, this is the truth, about 5 days later, I got a message from Michael Nyman saying, hi, how are you? I thought it was one of those situations. I'd had plenty of it on MySpace. Do you remember MySpace?
Vaguely.
I had plenty of those moments on MySpace where I thought somebody was winding me up, somebody was up to something, but they weren't really who they said they were. But I went along with it, and I thought I'd test them by saying how much I liked the music for the film Wonderland. Because Wonderland's an obscure movie about London and about people struggling to get by in London that Michael did the music for. And it was a really lovely soundtrack. And I remember being in the cinema, really loving it and thinking, this is great. And then thinking, Michael Nyman again, he always comes up with great music. And then I wrote to the guy on Facebook and said, really love the music from Wonderland. And he wrote back and said, maybe you'd like to do something with it. So that just confused me even more. Like, oh my God, Michael Nyman would never ask me to do anything with his music. So I arranged a meeting, go and meet this person that you don't believe is Michael Nyman. And Michael Nyman showed up. We started talking about ideas of what we could do. We were both interested in this French romantic painter from the 19th century called Théodore Géricault. Michael lent me a book, which I still have, about the life of Théodore Géricault, and I looked through it and was very struck by how all of the painters at that time in 19th century France, well, not all of them, but a lot of them were painting neoclassical themes, Roman histories and Greek histories, and it was deeply unfashionable to paint about contemporary life. But that's what Géricault did. So I thought maybe I could use Michael's music as a canvas and paint 21st century portraits on it. And I put this idea to him, and he liked it. And that's how the glare came about.
I thought you were going to say that he showed up thinking that the person he'd been communicating with couldn't really have been David McALMONT.
No. I've really had to give myself a good talking to in recent years. Because like you say, I've had all these great collaborators, and they must want to collaborate with me. But so often what's happened is I've been thinking I'm getting away with something here. They must all be insane. Why would David Arnold, Bernard Butler, Courtney Pine, Craig Armstrong, Michael Nyman, why would these guys want to work with me? But then you look back at it and you think, that's a really impressive list. So you must have something going for you, David. And so I've accepted that I've got some talent now. It was when I worked with Michael that I really began to accept it.
Yeah,
that is my favorite moment, I would say, of all the collaborations that I've done. Much as I love them, there was something really, really special about that one.
I always thought the James Bond theme you recorded with David Arnold was, I could see why you did it, because it was the big Shirley Bassey song, and that would really suit your voice, but you don't strike me as a James Bond kind of fellow, really.
I don't strike you... What does that mean?
I don't know.
Diamonds are forever. They are all I need to please me. They can stimulate and tease me. They won't leave in the night. I've no fear that they might desert me.
Well, let's talk about Yes.
Change the subject. Right, okay.
Yeah, absolutely. An almost ridiculously euphoric record, which the last time I spoke with Bernard, I described it as Motown Plus, and he described it as a Marvin Gaye moment.
Oh, did he?
He did. And it's almost certainly one of the best records of the last 20 years, really, guaranteed to light up a room. But when a record is that big and endures in the way that Yes has, I imagine it's not only a blessing, but it can be something of a curse.
I see it as a blessing now. It made everything that I do now possible.
Yeah.
And I've changed a lot. There was a time when I was quite a big drinker. and quite a big partier. And I think that might have coloured my view of Yes, because I was trying to do other things, and people more often than not would come to me and say, "You're the guy who sang Yes." And there were a few years where that really annoyed me. But then I realised that I was having a really bad attitude to something that I created that was really fantastic, that people really love. It was Twitter that really made a change on that, because on Twitter, somebody tweets Yes pretty much every day. And I thought, David, you and Bernard created something really amazing here. And it's actually no longer yours. People really, really love that. And then you go on tour and you meet people. Interestingly, up north, you meet a lot of women who are really, who that song means a lot to. And I've had it explained to me that they were treated a certain way by their men. And then Yes came out, and they didn't take it anymore. That's not something that I saw coming. So really, I had to get out of the song's way. Once again, deal with it along the lines of being that channel that this thing came through. When I wrote it, I was thinking a sort of "I will survive" thing. That seems to be the way that it worked. So, yeah, I know what you mean about it being a curse, but then I think I've been wrong in the past to let it get on my nerves so much, because I have done great work. It's not Yes's fault that some people are unaware of that great work. That's life doing its thing, and that's okay.
Again, that seemed an unlikely combination, really. The soul singer and the indie guitarist. That was probably the appeal. You know, it was a kind of a big mainstream song, but it didn't come from a mainstream place.
It was good because I came from a very gospel-y, soulful background. I lived in Guyana for 9 years. The British charts meant nothing there. And all the music that was successful was very much American gospel and American soul.
Yeah.
And so I came back here in 87 and I became interested in finding out about the music from the country that I was born in, that I hadn't engaged with. It's been a really long education, but slowly I've got more of an understanding of why Bowie mattered and why Morrissey mattered, because I was very much denied being in the UK when all of my friends were watching this bloke with daffodils appear on the television and change everything. So I was very interested at the time in finding out about what I'd missed out on. And Bernard always felt like a bit of an anomaly in Suede. And his interest was always in creating magnificent pop.
Yeah.
And when he left Suede, he was free to do that. And I was really, really lucky. That song went to Morrissey, and it went to Julian Reagan, and it went to Kirsty MacColl, and they all sent it back. So I was the fourth person to get it, and that was like a real stroke of luck. Yeah, it was a gift from the universe to me, I would say.
Well, let's talk about vocals, your voice. When you were young, were there specific singers that you looked up to, or perhaps specific sounds that had an influence over your techniques?
The first singer that I was really spellbound by was Art Garfunkel.
Oh, wow.
I Only Have Eyes for You, 1975, blew my tiny little mind. My mother had Tony Bennett and Perry Como and Bing Crosby and Dean Martin in the house, and we listened to those records a lot. There was a bit of Sam Cooke and a bit of Gladys Knight. In the 70s, when I was watching Top of the Pops, I tended to respond really well to people like the Stylistics and the Floaters, Barry Big, Bee Gees. There was a lot of falsetto around, so it was something that I never questioned. I've always gone there in my singing.
Yeah.
I never really questioned that. And then I went to Guyana and listened to a lot of soul music and a lot of gospel music. I'm a vocal coach as well. And what I found is that people are always complimenting me about my 3.5 octave range, but then I've just calculated it. And lots of the men who come to me have that range. They just don't use it. It's not unusual. It's just that I've always been happy to use all of my voice. And I like women singers a lot. My mother was very male singer oriented, but once I grew up and started listening to my own stuff, I was all over the Ella Fitzgerald and Sarah Vaughan and Billie Holiday and Diana Ross and people like that. So Roberta Flack as well. So because they sing naturally higher than men do, I sang along in my falsetto a lot. So I suppose that's how it formed. But I am guilty of writing songs that use all of my range. You know.
I think that the female voice transmits more emotion than the male voice anyway, I think. Or perhaps not more, but a broader range of emotion.
There's greater vulnerability, certainly. But when you get someone like Jeff Buckley or Art Garfunkel or even Curtis Mayfield singing in that area, Al Green, Neil Young, people do refer to those singers as particularly emotive.
Well, we'll round up, David, by going back to Fingersnap. With the release of Blackbirds, I'd imagined that there would be an album on the way, but you're actually taking the rather interesting step of recording a live album. Why is that?
Because the live experience is so incredible. We thought that we should capture it. Something really extraordinary happens. It's what we were going for. The mission, if you will, was to create a religious experience live. We're not looking to convert anybody or anything like that. But just that sense that you get when you have a religious experience, that's what we want to bring. The last time that we did a show, there was much weeping and much jubilation, and we were getting emails for days afterwards with people speaking about how their souls were rising to heaven because of what Guy and I did. So we thought that we'd capture it. Guy is gainfully employed, and I'm doing a degree in art history at the University of Birkbeck, which is going to go on for another 2 years. So the shape of the model at the moment is to release a new recording every few months, accompanied by a film. So Lewis has just done this film, and then we're going to approach a German film photographer artist to make a film for the next one that we do, and just do that for a while. And then when I'm free in 2 years' time, we'll be ready to put an album out. So every time you put something out, more and more people become aware of Fingersnap, and that's good. So you might say it's a 2-year campaign for an album in 2016.
Well, good luck with that, and thanks very much for talking to us today.
Thank you so much.
We'll just play out with a little bit more of Blackbirds.
And I would the wings of blackbirds would sing me to my dreams, and I would let wings of blackbirds sing me. Or would you still